Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. We're doing an Enhancement Shaman PvP guide, or just kind of general guide. I'd say general guide, but I don't do any PvE, so it's more focused on PvP. If you want a real good PvE guide, just look up Icy Veins Enhancement Shaman, and they're always written by like the top raiders or something like that. So going into towns, Boulder Fist is pretty much the choice here for me, pretty much every time. Just reduces the cooldown, increases damage. Landslide or Forceful Winds here. It's either one. Most of the time you want to take Landslide for Arena. If you want to fuck around in Battlegrounds, just take Forceful Winds though. For the 45 row, Spirit Wolf for Arena. If you just need the 20% defensive, you think a lot. So if you think you're going to get focused a lot, take Spirit Wolf. But for Battlegrounds, and if you're not going to get focused a lot, Earth Shield's not a bad choice. It's really situational, really. For the 60 row, I like taking Searing Assault for Battlegrounds, but I like taking Hailstorm for Arena, because with Hailstorm, you just constantly have it applied, and it's constantly applying the slow. So pretty much a target's never going to get away from you, or it helps you a lot actually reaching the target, so that's why I'd take that. And then if you don't want like just the extra damage on the Frostbrand, but you're still willing to apply it and get the slow off a lot, Overcharge isn't that bad on casters. It can hit for about 10,000 non-crits, 20,000 crits, which isn't that bad. For the 75 row, it's kind of same thing here. You don't take this, at least I've never taken Windrush Totem, except when I've leveled this guy, which is about 4 years ago. For the 75 row, it's pretty much Feral Lunge if you need that gap closer against like a Mage, Warlock, something kind of mobile. Warlocks aren't mobile, but they're just... I don't know why I even mentioned them. Mages and Hunters, let's say. Nature's Guardian just heals you. I've noticed you can barely notice the heal, and it's not that great, which makes me just consider Feral Lunge all the time, but... I don't know, I'm just too lazy to switch out of that talent. Sundering always, because it does a ton of damage, is a free interrupt, barely costs any Maelstrom, low cooldown, can hit for like 40,000, so it's pretty much just another Storm Strike. For the 100 row, it's pretty much anything goes here, honestly. It's bound to your playstyle. If you think you're going to be on the target a lot, and think you can get a lot of physical nature damage on the target, you can use Earthen Spike. Earthen Spike's not bad against casters because it increases your physical damage, which already hits them for a decent amount. And then nature damage also synergizes well with overcharge if you use that with casters. Suggestion there. And then if you need kind of armor bypass with, say, warriors, demon hunters, like any of the super OP melees right now, Ascendants can't be that bad. I've never run it personally, but if you just create, I guess, distance between yourself and the target, you can Storm Strike them. And vice versa, like if you just need to Storm Strike someone super far away, you can just Ascendance and then use Storm Strike on them. I just like this because it makes my wolves different colored, and that's, I don't know, you never see anything that really changes, I guess, your, like, in-game abilities from just talents. Otherwise, they just be normal wolves, I don't know. I just like taking these, it's just personal preference and it's more fun, so that's why I do it. But if you're trying to push rating, probably these two. For the honor talents, ethereal form for melee compositions is pretty broken. You're gonna have to be careful of the healers though whenever you run this, because sometimes the healers will have a brain and just be like, hey, I should hit the guy that's immune to physical damage but not spell damage, and you'll still die. But that's a pretty rare occurrence, especially at low rating. Ride the Lightning is good for Battlegrounds, not for Arena, because it breaks CC. I've talked about this a few times, and that's why I really liked the... It wasn't like Lightning Lasso, it was like the Enhancement Shaman honor talent that increased the damage you did to the target by 15%, but they got rid of it for some reason. So now we have really shitty Thunder Charge to replace it, which is also an essence, which I'll get into later. Grounding Totem for mage comps, or caster comps in general. You can ground polymorphs, spheres, hexes, all that stuff pretty easily, also on a 30-second cooldown. Shamanism, pretty much just, you know, it's Bloodlust. It's Bloodlust if you use it on a target, and if you don't know this, you have to have the target that you're casting the Bloodlust on targeted to have it affect them, or you need a macro with the target you want it to go on, which I guess I'll show the one time I actually make a guide. So it looks like this. Mary Jane was the last person I did arena with, so that's just my Blood Fury, my DPS trinket, and then my Blood Blessed. And then essentially it just gives me and the target, I think it's 30% haste, right? Wrong button. 20% haste. Good thing I checked, otherwise I'd look real stupid. But yeah, 20% haste with you and another target can be pretty good DPS, especially if you synergize it well with the other person's burst. Another thing worth mentioning is Counter-Strike. I don't think it's good for Arena, because anyone in Arena, if they see something that's called Counter-Strike Totem, they're probably going to kill it. But for Battlegrounds, for some reason, there's a majority of people that don't target it. So I use it in Battlegrounds, and it does a decent amount of damage. If I use it in one go and I get a decent amount of damage out of it, it does about 70,000 damage whenever it's placed. And then that's every 45 seconds, so just a tip there if you really want to use that. Then going on to, what are these things? Talent trees? Oh no, they're called traits. You pretty much take the Storm Strike ones whenever you can. Ideally, I think you want this, at least for the build I run, where you just kind of empower Storm Strikes with Landslide. And I'll get into the rotation later, but essentially you're just going for big Storm Strikes because the cooldown gets reset a decent amount with haste. And Stormbringer empowers your next Storm Strike, dealing 1,700 damage. That's going to be halved in PvP, so any active Azerite trait, when you're not instanced in PvP, it's going to be halved in PvP. So this will go from 1,700 to 850. And then this, I think this is actually, this synergizes better with the Wind Fury Town, this thing. And if you use this with Elemental Spirits, I forgot to mention this, if you get the blue Elemental Spirits, it increases the damage of your Wind Fury. And then that can buff your Wind Fury damage also. And then that with Thunderhand's Totem, which causes it to proc more. It can be pretty deadly, but the RNG gods will probably not shine upon you, and you'll probably be pretty fucked over, so wouldn't bother with it. But it's fun if you get bored, and that happens a lot. So anyway, pretty much just take all the Storm Strike talents you can. Generally, I just wing it here. If you want Mastery, the Enhancement Shaman Mastery isn't that great. It just increases proc chance of Wind Fury with... I can't even find it, man. Pretty much all the Mastery does is increase Stormbringer and Wind Fury proc chance and increase your Fire, Frost, and Nature damage. It's not really that significant. It can be, but your Storm Strike's physical damage, but the rest of it's all Nature damage. For traits, just take whatever. I don't think the third trait should really matter that much. It's your personal preference. You can run whatever. I'm not going to tell you what to run, except this one. That one's pretty good, which gives you a fuck ton of haste. It gives you... I can't do that math right now. 26 by 1. Okay, 260 haste, which is a decent amount. About a third of my haste. And then it just goes down over time, but... I pretty much have the worst ones you could get. I don't like the Azerite Globules, the haste one, or the Mastery and Leech one, but... You know, if you get this one, you're pretty much in the bank. And I suppose we talk about essences now. I'm pretty ashamed of how little I know about essences. It's generally just take Crucible of Flame and hope you get other things. That's what I do. I just noticed I didn't have music going the whole time. I don't know shit about essences. I'm pretty much going to be using this on all of my tunes since they made it to be really flexible and be able to be used, but I don't even... Oh, I just have to level Heart of Azeroth up. Cool. That just kind of shows how little I know about this, so I wouldn't go to me for knowledge about essences, but like I said, Icy Veins. It's a big source out there if you think you're missing anything. Let's go into the rotation now. So, Enhancement Shaman. What do? We are very squishy. We have little armor and little survivability. Our survivability is 40% less damage and Ghost Wolf to stack it up to 4 times to get that 20% extra damage. Other than that, you're pretty squishy. You have to be really careful of your health. And by the way, your healing surge goes down to 13,000 healing in PvP, which I just checked. And then with healing reduction, it goes down another 25%. So realistically, in PvP, when you're using Healing Surge, only expect to get about 11,000 health back per cast, which is fucking horrible. So I'm not even sure if it's worth a global at this point. So let's go over the basics in case you don't know the basics. This thing generates Maelstrom and does damage. This thing is your Mang damage. This thing is your Fire extra resource damage. You want to keep this applied pretty much all times because it just buffs your damage. Even though you don't have to, like... You want to apply it just because for Searing Assault it does a decent amount of damage, and if you have nothing else to press it doesn't hurt to apply it, but realistically the active damage that you do get from it, which is only 198,000, sorry, that would be awesome if it was actually that number, 198 fire damage, it's not really that much, it's less than the Hailstorm Honor Town, and like honestly I might just go back to Hailstorm. because it's looking a lot better now, but we'll see. The only reason you apply Flame Tongue is to get the Searing Assault active on. If you don't have Flame Tongue with Searing Assault, I'm not sure if... I mean, it's worth it if you don't have anything else to press, but if you have, like, Storm Strike, Avalanche, anything else up except just non-buffed Lightning Bolt, it's probably not the best ability to use. But it's there, and I use it a decent amount. And I think it's kind of sad how much I have it applied over other abilities, which is why I'm trying to encourage you guys to, like, stop the habit here and just not use it as much as I do. Anyway, Crash Lightning. I'll just show you what it does. It's a lot easier to explain. It does that damage right there, and then every time you hit with Storm Strike, it does that extra damage on top of the Chain Lightning icon. I'll do that again, because that probably confused some of you. So that 18,000 is the extra damage. So essentially, Crash Lightning, it hits the target initially, and then anytime you Storm Strike or Lava Lash after, it also does AoE damage. Lightning Bolt's pretty shit. It's an atrocity of what it's become. Sundering's like the new Lightning Bolt on a 40-second cooldown, pretty much. And I say this because in Wrath of Lich King, we had this neat thing called Maelstrom Power, or generally Maelstrom. Maelstrom's our resource right now, but there was a buff you got called Maelstrom. You got 5, got a free, I think it was either a free Hex, any healing spell, then Lightning or Chain Lightning. It did a decent amount of damage, and it spiced it up a little bit. Feral Spirit, it's kind of the same way. I mean, it's not as good as it once was, but I guess it'll do. It's like when you go back to your X, the damage isn't that great. It hits for 3,000, which is pretty ridiculous. I think my autos hit harder than that. Oh, okay, so it hits for about as much as my auto attacks. And the Wolves did approximately, sadly, 17,000 damage there, which really isn't a whole lot. So, that's Feral Spirit, in case you don't know. Bloodlust, we talked about this, gets you big. Concentrated Flame, you need to use this. I've been trying to get in the habit, it does a shit ton of damage. I'm expecting it'll get a nerf, which will encourage people to get new essences, which I wouldn't really mind. But until then, I'm perfectly fine with using this on pretty much every single one of my characters. Healing Surge, we talked about this. It also consumes 20 Maelstrom if you do have Maelstrom to be instant cast. This is something worth noting if you're trying to heal yourself and the enemy's low and you kind of want to Storm Strike them, because then you won't have enough Maelstrom. But just look out for it. Purge, you need to use it. I don't use it enough. They did nerf the mana cost of it, so you can get 10 of these off before you go in. If you count, I guess, the regen, I'm guessing you could get 11 off in a row, but that's kind of silly. So the rotation. Notice that landslide thing. Anytime that pops up, you pretty much just want to Storm Strike. Notice the damage there. Anytime that ability pops up either there or up here, whichever, like, place you have it on your UI, you pretty much want to Storm Strike immediately. The Sundering right there, just to show the damage, hit it for 28,000. You kind of want to... You don't want to cap out on Maelstrom like I am right now, but you do want to, I guess, use Earthbiter pretty commonly. That's just because as your rotation goes by, the cooldown of it just naturally goes by pretty fast, and that's obviously with the Fury of the Earth trade, or whatever trade I was talking... Not trade, Honor Talent. Not Honor Talent, actual talent. That's because of the actual talent I was talking about. Holy shit. Need to use that Azerite trait. You pretty much want to use that whenever it's on... Like, whenever it's usable, you need to use it. I'm telling you that right now, because that shit does amazing damage for, like, how easy it is to get. And this is the burst, guys. This is how you'd burst something. Ideally, I'd want a landslide proc before I popped all this burst, but just Storm Strike. It's really complex. It's hard to grasp by some minds, but hey, you win some, you lose some. If you can't play Enhancement Shaman, Elemental might be your cup of tea, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that's about it. It's pretty easy. Like I said, I use Flame Tongue like a depressing amount, but it is just extra damage. We'll see the extra damage that it does, looking at the recount here. And maybe it would be worth timing these fights by like minute increments to actually see how much damage I can get off, but I'm not that scientific. Not yet. I was gonna say, let's see if we can get another landslide proc. It's always nice when you get one of those. It's like a little mini roller coaster. The Flame Tongue did as much damage as Lava Lash, so I kind of take back what I said about it, but it is a passive ability, and when you look at the damage that it did compared to Storm Strike and like everything else, kind of question, is it worth it? It's up to you. It's up for interpretation. So let's get into the sad part about enhancement. When you have that damage reduction buff up, it takes about 5 seconds to get it up. Same here. Same here. I'm that immature. But it does take a while. You don't want to be caught slipping. You don't want to get caught out of Ghost Wolf and then just die immediately, because it happens pretty common. So you kind of have to be very wary of other people around you and watch your health. Just know that if any of the melees get around you and look like they're gonna burst you, you need to go and Ghost Wolf immediately and just go in the opposite direction. That's all I can say. That's all I can teach you guys. So pro tips for people that actually want to be better than me, and this is stuff I don't even do but I know about. You need to Tremor Fears. I'm pretty shit at this. Even when I'm playing against Warlocks, I don't think I ever use Tremor Totem. I'm sure my healers love it. So try and use that. You can also use Cleanse Spirit, which will remove a hex from someone. And Curse of Agony, which maybe it's worth it. If they're just stacking those agony traits, but other than that, I don't really know. Also Wind Shear, I hope we know that every class has an interrupt at this point if you're watching this. I think that about covers it pretty thoroughly. Let me know what you guys thought about this kind of more serious video. I really tried hard not to swear and, like, make really bad jokes. So, yeah, like, comment, subscribe, description, bell thing, and I'll see you guys next time.